I always thought my life with Clara was a steady rhythm, a melody I'd memorized over 12 years of marriage. She was the kind of woman who lit up rooms, blonde curls cascading like a golden waterfall, eyes that shimmered with mischief, and a laugh that could pull anyone into her orbit. I'm James, a structural engineer, grounded, practical, maybe a little dull compared to her vibrance. We lived in a modest house on the edge of Portland, surrounded by pines that whispered secrets in the wind. Our days were routine: coffee at dawn, work, dinner with a glass of wine, her telling me about her art gallery job while I nodded, half listening, sketching bridge designs in my head. Started with the phone. Clara had always been careless with it, leaving it on the counter, screen unlocked, notifications buzzing like flies. One evening, I was wiping down the kitchen after she'd gone to bed, and it lit up. A message from Evan Gallery. Odd, I thought. She'd never mentioned an Evan. The preview read, "Can't stop thinking about last night." My stomach twisted, but I told myself it was nothing. She worked late sometimes, hosting events, schmoozing with artists. Maybe Evan was a painter, a sculptor, someone she charmed with her usual flair. I didn't touch the phone. I wasn't that guy snooping, suspicious. Not yet. The next week, though, the cracks widened. She started dressing differently. Sharper heels, tighter blouses, a perfume I didn't recognize, heavy with musk. "New exhibit," she'd say, breezing out the door, her lips brushing my cheek too quickly. I'd sit there, blueprints spread across the table, the house too quiet without her humming. Then came the night she didn't come home until 3 a.m. She smelled like wine and something else, salt maybe, or sweat. "The after-party ran late," she mumbled, collapsing into bed. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her breathing steady while my mind churned. I started watching her. Not proud of it, but I did. The way she'd angle her phone away when she typed, the way she'd laugh at messages I couldn't see. I'd ask, casual as I could, "Who's that?" She'd wave it off, "Oh, just gallery stuff." But her eyes wouldn't meet mine. I felt it then, a slow burn in my chest, like a beam buckling under too much weight. I wasn't imagining this. Something was shifting, and I was on the outside of it. Then the photo. I found it by accident, or maybe fate. Her laptop was open on the couch, a folder labeled Work glowing on the screen. I clicked, expecting sketches or invoices. Instead, there was Clara, her hair wild, her blouse unbuttoned, sitting on a man's lap. He was lean, dark-haired, smirking at the camera like he owned the world. My world. My hands shook as I scrolled. More pictures, timestamps from months back. Months. This wasn't a fling. This was a life I hadn't been invited to. I didn't confront her that night. Couldn't. My throat felt like it was collapsing, every breath a fight against the rage boiling under my skin. I closed the laptop, poured a whiskey, and sat in the dark, the amber liquid trembling in the glass. Clara slept upstairs, oblivious, her secrets spilling out in pixels I couldn't unsee. Who was he? Evan, I guessed. The name burned in my skull, a brand I couldn't shake. I wanted to storm up there, shake her awake, demand answers. But I didn't. I needed proof, something solid, something she couldn't twist with her honeyed words. The next morning, she was all smiles, flipping pancakes like nothing had changed. "You're quiet," she said, sliding a plate toward me. I stared at the syrup pooling around the edges, my appetite gone. "Just tired," I lied, forcing a bite. She hummed a tune, her hips swaying as she moved to the sink. I watched her, this stranger in my wife's skin, and wondered how long she'd been playing me, how long I'd been blind. I started digging, discreetly at first. I checked her phone bill online, hours of calls to a number I didn't know, late-night texts stretching back 6 months. I drove by the gallery after work, parking across the street, engine off. She emerged at dusk, laughing, her arm linked with a man. Him. Evan. Tall, sharp-jawed, wearing a leather jacket like some cliché from a bad movie. They climbed into his car, a sleek black thing that screamed money, and peeled away. I followed, hands gripping the wheel, my pulse hammering. They stopped at a bar downtown, disappearing inside. I didn't go in. I sat there, engine idling, the night pressing against the windows. Back home, I hacked her email. I'm not tech-savvy, but desperation makes you learn fast. Password, our anniversary. Irony stung as I scrolled through messages. Flirty, intimate, plans for getaways. One read, James suspects nothing. We're good. My vision blurred, the screen swimming. She'd written that 2 weeks ago, after I'd asked about her late nights. She'd kissed me then, soft and slow, promising a weekend away to reconnect. A lie wrapped in tenderness. I found more photos, buried in a cloud account she thought I didn't know about. Clara and Evan, tangled in moments I couldn't stomach, hotel rooms, beaches, her gallery's back office. Each image was a knife, carving away the man I'd been. I saved them all, a digital arsenal, my anger hardening into something cold, precise. I wasn't just hurt, I was awake, and I was going to make her pay. The days after that were a fog, a slow unraveling. I went through the motions, work, home, nodding at Clara's chatter like a puppet on strings. But inside, I was building something. Not a bridge, not a structure to hold weight, but a plan to tear hers down. She didn't notice the shift in me, the way my silence wasn't exhaustion but calculation. She'd prattle on about her day, her voice a mask, while I studied her. Every gesture, every lie. She'd always been good at pretending, I realized. Maybe I'd just been too willing to believe. Evan became my obsession. I needed to know him, to understand the man who'd taken my life apart. A web search gave me his full name, Evan Marwood, 38, an artist with a studio in Seattle. His work was pretentious, abstract sculptures of twisted metal, sold for thousands to people who thought they saw meaning in chaos. His social media was a parade of arrogance. Photos of gallery openings, women fawning, Clara in the background of too many shots. I cross-referenced dates. He'd been in Portland often, aligning with her late nights. I tailed them again. This time, they went to a hotel, a boutique place with dim lights and overpriced cocktails. I waited in the parking lot, watching them stumble out hours later, her laughter cutting through the night. They didn't see me, didn't sense the shadow I'd become. I took photos, my phone's camera clicking silently, evidence stacking like bricks. But it wasn't enough. I didn't just want proof. I wanted her to feel what I felt, the betrayal, the humiliation, the slow bleed of trust. At home, I started planting seeds. Small things, leaving my laptop open with a fake email from a colleague about a trip, mentioning a promotion that'd keep me busier. She'd smile, encouraging, oblivious to the trap. I needed her to think I was drifting, distracted, giving her space to sink deeper. And she did. Her late nights multiplied, her excuses flimsier. Evan's prepping a big show, she'd say, her voice too bright. I'd nod, pouring her wine, my hands steady while my mind raced. One night, she left her purse on the counter, phone inside. I slipped it out, scrolled through texts. Evan, tomorrow, my place. James working late. Her reply, yes, can't wait. My jaw clenched, but I smiled to myself. Tomorrow, I thought. Tomorrow, I'd turn the tables. The next day, I called in sick. Clara left early, her perfume trailing her out the door. A goodbye kiss that felt like a slap. I waited until her car disappeared, then drove to Seattle. Evan's studio was in an industrial district. Gritty, loud, the air thick with rust and paint. I parked a block away, cap pulled low, and watched. She arrived at noon, her red coat aflare against the gray. He met her at the door, pulling her inside with a grin that made my fists curl. I didn't follow. Not yet. I had a different move in mind. I'd hired a private investigator weeks back, a grizzled guy named Ray who smelled like cigarettes and regret. He'd been tailing them too, quieter than me, better at blending in. His report came that afternoon. Pages of timestamps, addresses, photos sharper than mine. Evan had a wife, it turned out. Lena Marwood, a quiet woman who ran a bookstore in Tacoma. They'd been married 8 years, no kids. The irony wasn't lost on me. Two cheaters, cheating on their own. Ray included Lena's number. I stared at it, the seed of an idea sprouting. That night, Clara came home late, glowing, her lies polished to a sheen. "Evan's show is shaping up," she said, kicking off her heels. I nodded, sipping my drink, my face a mask. After she went to bed, I called Lena. Her voice was soft, hesitant, like she wasn't used to late-night calls. I didn't waste time. "Your husband's been with my wife," I said, flat, no preamble. Silence stretched, then a sharp intake of breath. "What?" she whispered. I told her everything, dates, places, the photos. She didn't cry, didn't scream. She just listened, her quiet fury matching mine. "What do you want to do?" she asked finally. "Ruin them," I said. She agreed. We met the next day, Lena and I, in a diner off the highway. She was small, dark-haired, her eyes hollow but sharp. We spread the evidence across the table, photos, texts, Ray's reports. She added her own. Evan's unexplained trips, his sudden inspiration phases that coincided with Clara's absences. We didn't talk feelings, too raw, too messy. We talked strategy. She knew Evan's weaknesses, his ego, his temper. I knew Clara's, her need for admiration, her fear of losing control. Together, we built a plan, a slow grind to strip them bare. Back home, I kept up the charade. Clara noticed nothing, too wrapped in her bubble. I started leaving hints, vague comments about hearing things at work. A fake call from a friend asking if everything's okay. Her eyes flickered, but she brushed it off, doubling down on her act. Kisses, dinners, promises of a quiet weekend. I smiled through it, my anger a cold steel beam holding me upright. She had no idea what was coming. Lena and I moved fast. She suggested the first strike. Public humiliation, subtle but sharp. Evan had a gallery opening in Seattle that weekend, a big deal with critics and buyers. Clara was going, of course, her work trip excuse already rehearsed. I let her pack, kissed her goodbye, my lips tight. "Have fun," I said, voice neutral. She didn't catch the edge. Lena and I drove up separately, meeting outside the venue. A sleek warehouse with glass walls and pretentious art glowing under spotlights. We'd made flyers. Simple, damning, photos of Evan and Clara, timestamps, snippets of their messages. "Evan Marwood, artist or fraud?" the headline read. Lena's idea, her quiet rage distilled into ink. We didn't hand them out, not yet. We slipped them into the programs, tucked them under wine glasses, left them on chairs. Guests milled around, sipping champagne, oblivious as the poison spread. Clara floated through the crowd, radiant in a black dress, her arm brushing Evan's too often. I watched from the shadows, Lena beside me, her breath shallow. Took an hour. A critic found one first, frowning, showing it to a friend. Whispers rippled, heads turning. Evan noticed, his smirk faltering as he snatched a flyer from someone's hand. Clara froze, her glass halfway to her lips, eyes darting. I saw the moment it hit, her face draining, her mask slipping. Evan stormed over to her, hissing something, but the damage was done. People stared. Phones came out, the hum of scandal drowning the jazz playing overhead. Lena squeezed my arm. A silent good. We didn't stay. We left them to flounder, driving back in silence. At home, I waited. Clara called at midnight, her voice shaking. "James, something awful happened. I need to explain." I let her ramble lies about a misunderstanding, a crazy ex of Evan's. I said nothing, just listened, my calm a blade sharpening. "Come home," I said finally. She did, arriving at dawn, eyes red, makeup smeared. She tried to hug me, but I stepped back. "Sit," I said, pointing to the couch. I laid it out. Photos, texts, the truth she couldn't spin. Her mouth opened, closed, no words coming. Then tears, big, theatrical ones. "It didn't mean anything," she sobbed. "I love you." I didn't flinch. "You love yourself," I said, voice ice. "And him. But not me." She begged, promised, but I was done listening. I handed her a suitcase. "Pack. Now." She stared, stunned, then started pleading louder. I walked away, locking myself in the study, her cries echoing through the house. Step 1 was complete. The real revenge was just beginning. Clara didn't leave quietly. She stood in the living room, suitcase half-packed, her voice rising into a wail that bounced off the walls. "You can't do this, James. We can fix it," she cried, clutching a sweater like it was a lifeline. I leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, my silence louder than her noise. Her tears didn't move me anymore. They were props, part of the performance she'd perfected. I'd seen the real her in those photos, laughing with Evan, carefree while I sat here, a fool in my own house. "Fix it," I said finally, my voice low. "You broke it 6 months ago." She froze, her mouth trembling, but I turned and walked upstairs. The click of the bedroom door locking was my answer. She stayed on the couch that night, her sobs fading into hiccups. I didn't sleep, couldn't. My mind was a machine now, gears grinding, plotting the next move. Lena texted at dawn. "Evan's spinning it. Says it's a smear campaign." I smirked, bitter. Of course he was. Men like him thrived on charm and denial. I replied, "Let him dig. We'll bury him deeper." Lena's response was a single word. "Good." We were partners now, bound by betrayal, our anger a shared blueprint. Morning came, gray and heavy. Clara was in the kitchen, puffy-eyed, making coffee like it was any other day. "We need to talk," she said, sliding a mug toward me. I didn't touch it. "No," I said, pulling out my phone. I showed her the flyer from the gallery, her face, Evan's, the damning words. "Talk to him about this." Her hands shook, coffee spilling over the rim. "James, I swear, it's not what you think." I cut her off. "Pack faster." She stared, then stormed off, muttering about lawyers. Fine, I thought. Let her try. I called Ray, the investigator. "Follow Evan," I said. "Everything. Where he goes, who he sees." Ray grunted approval, his voice gravelly. "You got it. Wife still there." I glanced at Clara, dragging her suitcase to the door. Not for long. She left an hour later, tires screeching, her red coat a fading blur. The house felt empty, but not hollow, cleaner, like I'd scrubbed a stain. I sat at the table, blueprints replaced by notes, Lena's ideas mixing with mine. This wasn't over. It was evolving. That night, I pored over Evan's life again. His art wasn't just a front. It was his ego, his currency. Galleries paid him advances. Collectors fawned over his genius. I found his next show, a pop-up in Portland, 2 weeks away. Perfect. Lena called, her voice steady. "I've got something," she said. "Evan's been skimming funds from a joint account. I can prove it." I leaned back, the pieces clicking. "Send it to me," I said. "We'll use it." She did, bank statements, dates matching his trips to Clara. Another weapon, loaded and ready. The days stretched, quiet without Clara's chatter, but I didn't miss it. I worked late, bridges rising on paper while my real project simmered. Ray's updates came daily. Evan meeting Clara at a cheap motel, her car parked outside his studio. Their routines sloppy now, arrogance making them careless. I saved every photo, every timestamp, a growing archive of their ruin. Lena dug deeper too, uncovering Evan's debts, loans he'd hidden from her, galleries he'd stiffed. "He's a house of cards," she said over coffee, her eyes glinting. "We just need the wind." I nodded. "I'll bring the storm." Clara called twice, leaving voicemails I didn't answer. "James, please. I'm sorry," she'd sob, her voice cracking. "I'm staying with a friend." Friend, I thought. Evan. I checked Ray's logs, her car at his place all night. Sorry didn't mean a thing when she was still tangled with him. I didn't call back. Let her stew, I decided. Let her think I was breaking. She'd see soon enough. The Portland show loomed. I scouted the venue. A loft downtown. Exposed brick and high ceilings. The kind of place Clara loved. I pictured her there, sipping wine, playing the muse. Not this time. Lena and I met again, this time at her bookstore. She handed me a USB drive. Evan's financial dirt. Screenshots of him bragging to Clara about fooling everyone. He's cocky, she said, her lip curling. Thinks he's untouchable. I took the drive, my plan sharpening. Not for long. I hired a printer, anonymous, cash up front. More flyers, but these were different. Evan's bank records, his lies to investors, photos of him and Clara mid-tryst, blurred just enough to dodge legal lines. Evan Marwood, thief and fraud, they read. I added a twist. Clara's name, bolded, gallery manager or mistress? Lena approved, her quiet nod a seal. We'd flood the show, but not with paper this time. I'd rented a projector, small, portable. The loft's white walls would be our canvas. The night before, I tested it in the garage. Images flashing, their faces larger than life, the truth undeniable. My hands didn't shake anymore. This wasn't rage, it was purpose. Clara texted, "Can we meet? I miss you." I stared at the screen, her words hollow. "Tomorrow," I replied, vague, letting her hope. She wouldn't miss me after that. The loft buzzed with art world types. Suits, hipsters, Clara in a silver dress that caught the light. I watched from across the street, projector tucked in a bag. Lena beside me in a dark hoodie. Evan strutted in, leather jacket gleaming, shaking hands like a king. They didn't see us slip in through a side door, blending with caterers hauling trays. The crowd thickened, voices loud, glasses clinking. Perfect cover. I found the spot. A balcony overlooking the main floor, the projector's lens aimed at the wall behind Evan's sculptures. Lena synced the USB, her fingers quick. "Ready?" she whispered. I nodded, flipping the switch. The first image hit. Evan and Clara, lips locked, a motel sign glowing behind them. Gasps rippled, heads turning. Then the bank records, number stark, his debts in red. Clara's name flashed next, tied to his lies. The room froze, then erupted, murmurs, shouts, phones snapping pictures. Evan spun, face paling, spotting the projection. Clara clutched his arm, her eyes wild, searching the crowd. They didn't see me, didn't see Lena. We were ghosts delivering justice. He yelled something, shoving through people, but the damage spread. Critics scribbled notes, collectors backed away. Clara darted for the exit, heels clicking, but the images followed, looping, relentless. I'd rigged the projector to a timer. It had run for hours. We slipped out, the chaos fading behind us. In the car, Lena laughed. A sharp, brittle sound. "They're done," she said. I didn't smile. This was just the spark. The fire was coming. Clara called as I drove home, her voice frantic. "James, what did you do? Everyone's talking. It's everywhere." I let her ramble, her panic a bomb. "You did this to yourself," I said, then hung up. She'd left her key when she moved out, but I'd changed the locks anyway. She showed up at midnight, banging on the door, begging. I watched from the window, her silhouette small, desperate. I didn't open it. Let her feel locked out, I thought, like I'd been for months. Ray called the next morning. Evan's spiraling, yelling at Clara, blaming her. She's crashing at his place, but it's a mess. Good, I thought. Let them claw each other apart. I checked online, blogs already buzzing. Artist scandal rocks scene. Clara's gallery issued a statement, distancing themselves. Step 2, complete. Step 3 was personal. I didn't stop with the show. That was public, satisfying, but not enough. Clara's world was image, Evan's was money. I'd hit both, but now I'd go deeper, twist the knife where it hurt most. She'd always craved attention, needed to be adored. I'd take that away, leave her bare. Evan's pride was his art. I'd make it ash. Lena agreed, her own vendetta fueling her. "He's losing sponsors," she said over the phone. "Keep pushing." I would. I had more than flyers now. I had their lives in my hands. I started with Clara's circle. She'd bragged about her friends, gallery owners, artists, the cultured crowd I'd never fit into. I emailed them, anonymous, attaching photos, texts, the truth. "Know who you're praising," I wrote. No threats, just facts. Responses trickled in shock, disgust, a few defending her, but the tide turned. Her phone must have lit up because she called again, screaming. You're ruining me. My friends won't talk to me. I listened silent, then said, You ruined us first. Click. Evan's turn came next. His sculptures were his soul, or so he claimed. I found his supplier, a metalworks shop in Tacoma. Ray got me a name, a number. I called posing as a buyer casual. Heard Marwood's shaky debts scandals. Still worth stocking. The guy hesitated, then spilled. Evan owed them thousands, payments late. I nudged. Might want to cut ties. Words spreading. They did. 2 days later, Ray confirmed. Evan's latest order canceled. His studio scrambling. Another crack in his castle. Clara showed up at my office, a rare move. I was drafting a bridge span when she burst in. Mascara streaking, her silver dress swapped for jeans. James, please stop this, she begged, voice raw. I'll do anything. My coworkers stared, but I waved them off, calm. Anything? I said, leaning back. Leave him. Leave me. Disappear. She flinched, then nodded, frantic. Okay, I will. I didn't believe her. Prove it, I said. She left, promising, but Ray texted an hour later, her car at Evans. Liar still. That night I burned her things. Not all. Just the stuff she'd left behind. Clothes she loved, sketches she'd framed. The backyard fire pit glowed, her past curling into smoke. It wasn't rage, it was release. I kept one photo, though, us on our honeymoon, smiling, clueless. A reminder of what she'd thrown away. The revenge wasn't done. It was growing claws. The fallout spread like oil on water, slick and unstoppable. Clara's gallery fired her. Officially unrelated. But the timing said everything. Her name was poison now, whispered in art circles with smirks. Not awe. Evan's show bookings dried up. Galleries citing, scheduling conflicts. Lena fed me updates. His tantrums, his fights with Clara. Their perfect little lie crumbling. She's begging him to fix it, Lena said, her voice edged with glee. He's broke, though. Can't. I pictured them, trapped in his studio, snapping at each other. Good, I thought. Let them rot together. I wasn't done. Clara's plea at my office had been a spark. I'd given her a chance, a test she'd failed. Now I'd tighten the noose. She'd always banked on her charm, her looks, her ability to float above consequences. I'd ground her, stripped that away. I contacted her landlord. Her friend's place was a sublet, tied to her name. A quick chat, a few photos sent, and he evicted her. No drama in my building, he said. She'd have nowhere to land. Evan's ruin deepened too. I tipped off a blogger, anonymous, untraceable, about his debts, his scams. The post went live. Artists fall. Talent or trick? It spread fast, comments piling up, his reputation shredding. His sculptures sat unsold, his studio a ghost town. Ray snapped a photo. Evan loading boxes, Clara yelling in the background. They were sinking and I was the weight. Clara tried one last time. She showed up at the house, soaked from rain, no coat, no pride. James, I'm done with him, she said, teeth chattering. I'll leave, I swear. Just help me. I studied her, thin, pale, the glow gone. Help yourself, I said, shutting the door. Her fists pounded, then stopped. She left, a shadow in the storm. I didn't feel triumph, just cold resolve. Lena and I met the next day. They're broken, she said, sipping tea, her eyes bright. Enough. I shook my head. Not yet. The final blow was brewing, something crueler, something permanent. I'd take their last shred of hope, twist it, and watch them choke on it. The machine was still running, and I was at the controls. Clara's last visit lingered like damp rot, her desperation clinging to the air. I didn't soften, couldn't. She'd chosen this, built her cage with Evan, brick by lie. Now she was homeless, jobless, her charm a faded echo. Evan wasn't faring better. His studio lease was up, unpaid, his art collecting dust. Lena and I had stripped them bare, but the hunger in me growled louder. This wasn't enough. I wanted them to feel the weight I'd carried, the slow crush of betrayal, magnified tenfold. Lena called, her voice a razor. Evan's selling off pieces, cheap, desperate. Clara's with him, scavenging. I pictured them, clawing at scraps, and felt a flicker of something. Not joy, but fuel. Let's take the rest, I said. She paused, then agreed. We'd hit their pride before, their livelihoods. Now we'd take their future, their last threads of hope. I dug into Evan's past, old interviews, boasts about a dream project, a massive installation he'd pitched to a wealthy collector, Victor Hensley. It was his lifeline, his shot at redemption. Perfect. I found Hensley's contact through Ray. Money opens doors. Posing as a consultant, I emailed him, polite, professional. Concerns about Marwood. I wrote, attaching the blogger's post, the financial dirt, photos of Evan and Clara. Unreliable. Risky investment. Hensley replied within hours. Appreciate the heads up. Deal's off. I imagined Evan's face when he got that call. His swagger crumbling, his dreams snuffed out. Clara would feel it too, tethered to his sinking ship. She texted that night. A single line. You've destroyed me. I didn't reply. Destroyed? No. She'd done that herself. I was just the mirror showing her the wreckage. Ray sent a photo, her sleeping in Evan's car, parked outside a dive bar, her face gaunt. Evan slumped beside her, bottle in hand. They were unraveling, threads pulling loose. I saved the image, another piece of my collection, a gallery of their fall. The next move was mine alone. Clara had a sister, Elise, her only family, a quiet woman in Eugene who'd always liked me. I drove down, unannounced, a folder under my arm. Elise opened the door, surprised, then wary. James? What's wrong? I handed her the evidence, photos, texts, the truth. Clara's not who you think, I said. She read in silence, her jaw tightening. She said you left her, Elise murmured. Lied about that too. I left her with the folder. By nightfall, Elise texted Clara. Ray intercepted it. You're dead to me. Clara's last anchor gone. The air felt sharper now, cleaner, like the world was shedding their stain. Lena and I met at her bookstore, the shelves a fortress around us. Evan's begging for loans, she said, flipping through papers. No one's biting. His desperation was a song, low and jagged, and I wanted to turn up the volume. Clara was a ghost, spotted at a shelter, then a friend's couch, her orbit shrinking. They were separate now, Ray confirmed, their fights too bitter to sustain. I didn't care. Together or apart, they'd pay. I targeted Evan's legacy next. He'd bragged about a mentorship program, training young artists, his gift to the community. A lie, mostly he charged them, pocketed the cash. I contacted the kids' parents, anonymous tips with proof, receipts, Evan's boasts to Clara about the scam. The program collapsed overnight, angry calls flooding his phone. One father posted online, Marwood's a con. Keep your kids away. The comments exploded, his name, once gold, now mud. Clara tried clawing back. She applied for jobs, galleries, shops, anything. I'd made calls, sent emails, her reputation a shadow ahead of her. Rejections piled up, her voicemails to me growing shrill. James, I can't eat. I can't sleep, stop this. I listened, deleted, moved on. She'd fed on my trust for months. Let her starve on her choices now. Ray caught her selling jewelry, our wedding band included, at a pawn shop. The photo hit me hard, but I swallowed it. She'd sold more than gold. Lena suggested the next cut. Evan's got a storage unit, unsold pieces, tools. He's behind on rent. We paid the fee, claimed it as abandoned, legal and quiet. Inside, we found his life. Twisted metal, half-finished dreams. I didn't destroy it, not yet. I donated it, every piece, to a scrapyard, proceeds to a charity in Lena's name. Evan would hear eventually, his art, his soul melted down for pennies. I saw Clara once more by chance. She was at a gas station, thin, hair stringy, pumping fuel into a borrowed car. She didn't see me, didn't feel my eyes. I drove away, her image a fading smudge. The revenge was a machine now, humming, relentless. One more turn, I thought. One more twist. Evan cracked first. Ray called, voice dry. He's in a bar, drunk, yelling about you. I drove there, curious, parking in the lot. Through the window, I saw him, unshaven, wild-eyed, slamming a glass. James ruined me, he shouted, slurring. Him and that witch. The bartender cut him off, patron staring. I didn't go in. I watched, the scene a painting, his fall, my brushstrokes. He stumbled out, tripped, landed in a puddle. I snapped a photo, sent it to Lena. Pathetic, she texted back. Agreed. Clara's turn came slower, quieter. She'd moved to a motel, a gray box off the highway, working nights at a diner. I found out through Ray who'd tailed her there. She waited tables, her smile forced, customers barely tipping. I went once, sat in a corner, cap low. She didn't recognize me, her eyes dull as she scribbled my order. Coffee, black. Her hands shook, nails chipped, the woman I'd known erased. I left $1, walked out. No words. She'd feel me in the silence. Their worlds were rubble now, but I wanted permanence, a scar they couldn't heal. Evan's art was gone, his name trash, but he had one last tie, his family. His parents, old money, had distanced him after the scandal, but still sent checks. I mailed them a package, photos, the mentorship scam, his spiral. Your son, I wrote. The check stopped. Ray confirmed. Evan was alone, truly no safety net. Clara's final thread was thinner, her hope. She'd posted online, a plea for a fresh start, claiming victimhood. I countered, anonymous, flooding the thread with truth, screenshots, dates, her lies. The post vanished, her account deleted. She had no voice left, no stage. I pictured her reading it, shrinking, the spotlight she'd craved extinguished. Lena and I toasted that night, whiskey, her bookstore quiet. Done? She asked, glass raised. Almost, I said. The last piece was personal, a quiet blade. I'd saved it, sharpened it. Tomorrow I'd wield it. The house felt mine again. Clara's ghost scrubbed out. I'd repainted, rearranged, every corner a reclaiming. But one thing stayed, the honeymoon photo, framed, a relic of her betrayal. I took it down, drove to the motel where she worked. She was behind the counter, wiping it slow, her back to me. I didn't speak, just slid the photo across. Us smiling, the glass cracked now. She turned, saw it, froze. James? She whispered, voice breaking. I met her eyes, held them, then walked away. No words needed. She'd see that moment every night, the life she'd torched. Evan's end was louder. He'd landed in jail, bar fight, no bail money. I didn't cause it, but I nudged it along. A call to the bar owner, a tip about Evan's tabs, and the cops were waiting next time he swung. Ray sent a mugshot, hollow cheeks, dead stare. I printed it, pinned it beside Clara's pawned ring photo, a gallery of my own. Their ruin framed. Lena moved on, her bookstore thriving. Evan a memory she'd shed. She thanked me, a rare softness in her. You didn't have to help me, she said. I did, I replied. We'd been mirrors, reflecting each other's pain, turning it into power. She hugged me, brief, then let go. I drove home alone, the night thick, my chest lighter. Clara tried one last reach. A letter, hand-scrawled, slipped under my door. I'm nothing now. Forgive me. I read it, felt nothing, burned it in the sink. Forgiveness wasn't mine to give. She'd stolen that too. Ray said she'd left town, no trace. Evan was out, drifting, a shadow in Seattle's underbelly. They were gone, erased from my horizon. The final act was mine. I sold the house, moved north. A cabin by a lake, pines whispering again, but peaceful now. I built bridges still, but smaller, personal ones, would not steal for local trails. The machine stopped, its work done. I'd taken everything, her light, his pride, their futures, and left them with dust. Months passed, the lake a mirror for my days, calm, steady mine. I'd hear whispers sometimes, through Ray or old contacts. Clara in a trailer park, waitressing still, her laugh a memory no one chased. Evan busking with a guitar, his hands too shaky for metal now, his name a joke in art circles. They'd fallen far, farther than I'd planned, but I didn't regret it. They'd built their pyre. I just lit the match. I kept the photos, mugshot Evan, broken Clara, a private archive, not for gloating but proof. Proof I'd survived, rebuilt while they sank. The cabin smelled of cedar, my morning's coffee and quiet, no echoes of her voice. I'd dated once, a woman from town, but it faded. Trust was a beam I couldn't brace yet. Maybe someday. For now, the lake was enough. Its ripples my rhythm. Lena sent a postcard, her store expanding. A new life. "You're free," she wrote. The revenge had been a storm, fierce, consuming, but it had cleared the air. I didn't dream of Clara anymore. Didn't wake to Evan's smirk. They were footnotes, smudged, irrelevant. I hung a new photo me, by the lake, alone but whole. No cracks in this glass. One day a package arrived, no sender, just a sketch. Clara's style, shaky lines, a woman kneeling, faceless. Plea maybe or guilt. I stared, then tossed it in the fire. The flames ate it quick, her last gasp curling to ash. I walked outside, the wind cold, the water still. They'd betrayed me, carved me hollow, but I'd filled it. Stone by stone, choice by choice. The sun dipped, painting the lake gold. I stood there, breathing, the past a shadow I'd outrun. They'd lost everything, love, pride, hope, and I'd taken it, piece by cruel piece. Revenge wasn't sweet. It was heavy, final, a bridge I'd crossed and burned. I turned back to the cabin, the day done, my life mine again.